Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and today I want to talk to you about Leica's announcement of the new full-frame digital rangefinder M10-P. Now, the bad news is that I am not unbiased about this, but the good news is I knew this going in, and will do my darndest, like always, to ensure that my biases don't get in the way. We'll get into this in a little bit, but before we do, I want to give a big shout out to Leica. Thank you guys for making an M10-P available to me, along with a Summilux M35mm f1.4 and this Summicron M75mm f2 for some quality hands-on time. And let you know, we've just created a Patreon page and invite you to join us by becoming a patron of our work for as little as a couple of bucks a month or more. At the end of the show, I'll go into the details, but in the meantime, you can always go to www.patreon.com/Hugh Brownstone to learn more. Okay. Now, you don't need me to go through the details of the latest incarnation of what is indisputably the most legendary camera of all time, the M. Except I will, in order to make a broader set of points, especially just days before another storied brand, Nikon, introduces its first full-frame mirrorless camera. Because, depending upon your point of view, the M10-P is lovely, perhaps just what you've been waiting for, something to which you aspire. Or something somewhere between irrelevant and ridiculous, or then something in between those two extremes. Hold that thought. Try not to prejudge, and allow me to help you by quoting F. Scott Fitzgerald, who wrote in 1936 that the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. Good? So, on the one hand, the M10-P is an M10. Which means, like the M10, it is as thin front to back as the original 35mm film camera from which all digital M's trace their lineage, has the same improved viewfinder with integrated rangefinder over its predecessors, the same 24-megapixel full-frame sensor, same Maestro 2 imaging processor, same 3-button layout on the rear with 3-inch non-articulating Gorilla Glass screen, same manual focus-only M mount, same 5 frames per second burst rate, same peerless build quality and iconic design. You get the idea. Oh, and by the way, capable of the same drop-dead gorgeous or stop-dead-in-your-tracks imagery, even when you don't quite nail the focus. Like this. I have never been able to turn my camera toward this last kind of subject, let alone show it. But why don't we hold that thought, and let's get back to something way easier, the gear. The M10-P adds to the M10 a touch screen, useful for playback or picking a point on the screen during live view and then punching in to check focus. An integrated level on the rear panel in live view, a hot shoe cover made of metal matched to the camera's top plate, and a $500 price increase. On the other hand, it's also an MP, which stands in Leica's nomenclature for mechanische perfection, mechanical perfection. And in this case, in addition to standard MP differentiators like the original Leica wordmark engraved on top of the rangefinder housing, and the removal of the red dot logo from the front of the camera, mechanical perfection is taken a step further in the M10-P with the quietest shutter Leica has ever made. For those of you who appreciate this kind of thing, it does have its own magic. On the third hand, maybe third eye, the fact that improving upon perfection is oxymoronic doesn't escape me. Nor does the fact that no matter how quiet a mechanical shutter is, an electronic shutter is quieter, as in no sound at all. Or that removing the red dot logo from the front of this particular camera makes it about as unobtrusive as a Mercedes without the TriStar, which is to say, it doesn't. Unless, well, hold that thought too. Or that 5 frames per second on a camera with manual rangefinder focusing is not state-of-the-art nor critical, though could be nice. Or that there's no video. Or that the $500 price increase over the base M10 means the M10P costs a cool $8,000 body only. Or that the 24 megapixel full frame Sony a7 III is dramatically faster, quieter when using electronic shutter, offers outstanding 4K video recording, in-body image stabilization, and an integrated EVF with just about the best autofocus in the market, with some incredible glass available for it at 1/4 the price. Or that Fujifilm's just about 1/5 the price, clearly Leica M-inspired 24 megapixel APS-C X Pro 2, can take Leica M glass via adapter, just like the A7 III in fact, has a hybrid opto-electronic viewfinder, and native autofocus capabilities along with its own lovely range of crop sensor AF lenses. Or that Panasonic's little GX9 is even smaller and functionally richer than the X Pro 2 and the M at 1/8 the price. Or that in order to navigate the M10P's inherently slower manual rangefinder focusing, one might resort to zone focusing with, say, a 35mm lens set to f8 at ISO 100 with a resultant hyperfocal distance of 17.5 feet, nearest 9 feet or so, and a shutter speed of 1/500th in bright daylight, at which point this is probably how Cartier-Bresson shot much of the time, yet a smartphone would be even smaller, even faster, better connected, cheaper. You get this idea too. But here's the thing. None of this may matter to you. But stay with me in either case, because whether you can afford it or not, love it or not, the M has stood the test of time the way no other camera has. And that is because it was and remains an extraordinary tool used by extraordinary people to capture or create an extraordinary number of extraordinary moments built through extraordinary times. It is, for people like me anyway, a talisman. If you are unfamiliar with Leica's history, please do check out the link I'll put in the show notes below for my 4-part series on the Leica SL. This is Leica's first full-frame, EVF-only, interchangeable lens, mirrorless, introduced almost 3 years ago. Among other things, the series will take you through an abridged version of Leica's history, along with my own personal connection to Leica cameras, the very start of my lifelong passion for photography, beginning with this camera, bought secondhand by my mother from Bauhaus-trained photographer Hilda Hubbuck, a young woman who fled Nazi Germany in 1934. And, well, yeah, check out the SL series. But this is just one of the reasons I think the M actually transcends the category of camera. The same way a grade-listed property transcends the category of building, or the office of a politician transcends the person inhabiting it. And that brings with it a whole host of challenges wrapped up in a singular role required of each: stewardship. You may have title to the thing, but you don't own it the same way you own an ordinary thing. You have a responsibility to keep it and maintain it as it has always been while you have it, with the full knowledge that someday someone else will nominally own it, and they, in turn, will have to maintain it for the people who follow them ad infinitum. Sometimes this is actual law, as in the case, say, of a grade 1 or 2 listed building in the UK. Sometimes it's convention. But sometimes it requires neither law nor convention, but instead simply a profound respect for and understanding of what the thing is. worthy, timeless, brilliant on its own terms. It's clear. The good news is that Leica Camera AG understands and respects the fact that they are stewards of an icon. The bad news is that they understand and respect the fact that they are stewards of an icon. Change it too much, and it no longer possesses that which made it an icon in the first place, and would no doubt make a bunch of folks quite unhappy. My take is that Leica Camera has little choice but to evolve the M a couple of millimeters or a screw or two at a time. That's what they have the medium format S, the full frame SL&Q, and the APS-C TL2 and CL for. These models are relatively unconstrained by the burden of history in terms of design and specification, and can do other things, other ways, for other people. I'll put a link to my review of the CL and TL2 down in the show notes below as well. Of course, as always, you may feel differently, and that's fine. There are many, many options out there that may make much greater sense for you. It is true that as photographers today we suffer from an embarrassment of riches. As for me, well, in the end, I love the M10P for what it is, not what it isn't. It is vastly superior to my M8, which I sold years ago after being frustrated by it. And it is, for me, a physical reminder every time I pick it up, just like the SL, CL, TL2, and Q, that what I shoot and share should matter. Even if I am far from achieving that goal on anything remotely like a consistent basis. And when shooting with a longer lens, like this gorgeous, tiny, silky, bulletproof, and super shallow depth of field Summicron M75mm f2, really need the VisoFlex tiltable EVF, which for another $575 I think is the single most important accessory you can have for this particular camera. Back to the mundanities. I'm delighted to see the original Leica wordmark on the top plate, back I think where it belongs. But what I like most about that are two things quite beyond the aesthetics. First, it reads Germany, not West Germany. A reminder that things can get better, that bitter divides and proxy wars cannot stand indefinitely. More importantly to me, what is no longer there? The letters DRP, which between 1934 and 1945 stood for Deutsche Reichspatent. A reminder, maybe, that those who forget history or never learn it in the first place, irrespective of borders or nationality, are destined somewhere to repeat it. Yeah, okay, enough of that. Let's wrap it up. The evolution of the M10 to the M10P. The M10P will continue to be sold alongside the original, is lovely and worthwhile. The touchscreen is simple, responsive, and just works. You can't say that about all touch implementations these days, though like a number of others, it does not work for menu item selection. And this is not a camera for which I would prefer the TL2's extraordinary interface. The Viewfinder is beautiful. The live view implementation on the rear panel, clean, simple, and again, just works, kind of like the way a photographer does. The shutter is the quietest I've ever heard, with a soft and delightful, well, you can't even quite call it a thunk anymore. Maybe an, oh yeah. The sensor and processor, brought over from the M10, continue to capture beautiful detail and color. The metering works very well, and noise in the image is essentially a non-issue, as far as I bothered to test it, which is 6400, the top of the range engraved on the dedicated ISO dial, which I love too, and I almost never shoot even at that. And the glass. Oh my. As you can see once again, this time with the 75-2, straight out of camera for a few quick portraits. Okay, I converted Claudia to black and white. As I said earlier, I don't think you can really call the M10P unobtrusive. Well, I guess you can call it whatever you like, but really, unless you're comparing it to something like the limited edition Zagato or the 4x5 speed graphic, which the original M supplanted as photojournalists' favorite camera shortly after it was introduced. Or to a 60s or 70s SLR, any SLR really, which, by the way, fun fact, were usually banned from courtrooms because they were not nearly as quiet as the Leica even then, which is why the Leica, in 4 states that I know of here in the US, was specifically written into law as the standard by which other cameras were to be judged before being allowed in. As I also said, I think unobtrusive, the word unobtrusive, given the vastly more litigious camera-aware zeitgeist in which we live, is an adjective better suited to a smartphone, which, while I think really is the camera that, say, a 20-year-old Cartier-Bresson would use today, no less an authority than Magnum photographer and Cartier-Bresson colleague Elliot Erwitt insisted firmly to me would not be the case. I'll put a link to that conversation in the show notes section below too. I fell a little bit in love with him. In any event, neither my iPhone X nor an M10 of any variety will replace our daily hybrid shooters, the Panasonic GH5 and Sony a6300, much as I would so enjoy to have an M10 back in my bag for slower, more personal work, a complete and utter repudiation of my less than stellar experience with the APS M8 I gave up years ago. That's it, really. As I alluded to at the beginning, I simply don't review Leicas the way I do other cameras. Especially in the case of the M, I see little point going on about what it doesn't do for me, or how what it does could be done much better, or how much less expensive it should be. Because I also understand that this is a camera for the ages, with a very specific audience in mind. And I understand basic economics, or to put it differently, it would be a bit like criticizing Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring because it isn't Avengers Infinity War, criticizing the original IBM Selectric because it doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi, or bemoaning the price of an all-original Series 1 Jag XKE, or a ground-up restoration of an AC Cobra with improved engine because they don't have Apple CarPlay, traction control, or heads-up displays. Although it would be nice if the M10P's viewfinder provided even greater eye relief. It would be nice if it had a higher capacity, longer lasting battery. It would be huge if it had IBIS, but it doesn't matter. In the end, my feelings about the M10P are like the camera itself, simple, straightforward, and still very complex. It is, you knew I was going to use this word at least one more time, right? An extraordinary and compelling thing, a talisman, something that manages to embody almost 100 years of modern history in all its glory and gore, if one chooses to see it, and captures stunning images if the person behind the camera has what it takes. So, to close, the M10P is inspiring, a little intimidating. Like the SLCL and TL2 before it, it whispers to me, do good work. Make it matter. Which, finally, Leica or not, budget or not, personal history or not, is on me to do anyway. Yeah. If you like what you've seen here today, please give a thumbs up, subscribe, join the conversation below. You guys continue to be just incredible, knowledgeable, inspiring, funny. I mean, you're a joy, truly. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Grab one or both of our new Hold That Thought t-shirts you wanted us to put up at our new 3BMEPthreadless.com store. Support our work by using our affiliate links down below in the show notes, dropping us coffee money via our PayPal link down below in the show notes, or even better than that, we invite you to become a patron of our work over at Patreon. Link down below. We've created our Patreon page because we are stoked to bring you not only gear reviews, but with our What Were You Thinking and Good World Gone Bad series, historical, educational, artistic morsels, and longer form conversations, not interviews, with world-class photographers, curators, gallery owners, keepers of the legacy, folks like Elliot Erwitt, Agnès Cyr, Mark Lubell, Ethylene Staley, and friends like Brian Smith, Paul Giroux, Nino Rakicevic, and more. We'd really like you to join us to deliver this kind of content regularly. Your support on Patreon will really help us ramp it up. In which case, as always, we thank you for it. That's it. For Three Blind Men and an Elephant, I'm Hugh Brownstone. See you next time.